I'd like to give you all a warm welcome to this Zoom to Zoom. My name is Junior Sheikh, and with me today I have Amjid Ali. Thank you so much, Amjid.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be joining you today.
Thank you so much. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, all is well, alhamdulillah.
Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today. Amjid Ali is the 2019 MTM Awards Batook Pandya Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Amjid, I just want to get straight into it today. 2020 was a really tough year for all of us. Us at MTM Awards really missed not having our ceremony in 2020, although 27th of March, we will be announcing our winners. How was 2020 for you?
Well, may I begin by first and foremost saying all praises and thanks to the Almighty for his shower of mercy and blessings. And I'd like to preface my answer by taking this opportunity to thank MTM for all their hard work and dedication, to recognize the work of all local community stakeholders. For me, to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award Junior was a great honor and a privilege. So thank you to you, your dad, because I know all of the great work that you do, and the people who nominated me and the panel for selecting me. I really was surprised, and it really was a great honor. Thank you.
You are a very deserving winner, and we'll touch on a few of the reasons why you took the Lifetime Achievement through talking about some of the work that you've done over the years. What sort of year did you have in 2020 in terms of, I know you had to shield a lot through the year.
Well, Junior, what can we say? The arrival of COVID-19 is unprecedented in my lifetime, and the effects have been devastating. It's made some people redundant, others lonely and isolated. Many have lost their lives of loved ones. And it continues to deprive children of an education. I have an 18-year-old daughter who's in her second year of A-levels, and I know firsthand the effect that it's had on her. For me personally, having to shield, it's a small price to pay to protect my family, the wider community, and as we are continually told, the NHS, which I know from personal experience is under extreme pressure. I'm fortunate in that I've been able to work from home with the work that I do, but completely understand the devastating effect of lockdown and social distancing measures on the country as a whole. And my heart goes out to those people. On top of that, though, it has given me time for reflection. It provided me time for examination of the priorities in my life, what matters to me, in terms of the material side of things, the spiritual aspect of our lives, but most importantly, it showed me the true value of my family, friends, and colleagues. So, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed, but I'm also acutely conscious of the fact that many people in our communities have been adversely affected, and my heart goes out to them.
Yes, and I would like to echo that sentiment. There has been a massive impact on the community here, with a lot of families suffering. What are you most proud of looking back at your career and the professional work that you completed, that you achieved?
Well, for the last 34 years, believe it or not, I've had the privilege of working with some of the brightest minds across the private sector, public, charitable, and voluntary sector. I've been chair of BMCS. I've worked as a NHS non-executive director in Bristol, my role with HSBC, and on more recently, the work that I'm now doing with NHS Blood and Transplant and Kidney Care UK. My time as the lead of HSBC's Islamic Financial Services division was the last 8 years of my career with the bank. And I have to say it was a real blessing. I had a great line management team, great colleagues supporting me, and a team working around me that was truly committed to serving our customers, the Muslim community at the time, the majority of our customers were Muslim. None of us thought of it as a job. It was almost a personal ambition to ensure that we were able to provide a service that would help our fellow Muslims access financial services in accordance with their faith. So it didn't feel like a job at all. And alhamdulillah, you know, I would say it was a fantastic time for me. And I was very sad to step away from the organization and the role that I was doing because of challenges with my health at that time. So in June 2012 was when I took early retirement from HSBC.
And I do have fond memories of playing that HSB Amanah spot on my drive time show when we launched Radio Ramadan Bristol in 2005. Lots of fun, actually. I miss those days. You're the partner and project lead for transplantation and organ donation in Islam. Why is this issue important to you?
It's important to me because sadly, I've had to live with chronic kidney failure for the last 33 years. I was diagnosed at the age of 20 with chronic kidney disease. In my case, it was end-stage renal failure, which meant that I had to go on to dialysis straight away to preserve my life. And that meant 3 times a week, I was having to attach myself to a machine for up to 5 hours a time, you know, in order to clean out the toxins from my blood. I don't want anyone to have to experience the challenges that I and my family have had to contend with over the last 33 years, despite the fact now that, you know, I've had a transplant for 10 years. The 23 and a half years on dialysis have left me with systemic problems with my health. So there are significant challenges, and if it wasn't for the fact that I am truly blessed with a supporting family, the great team at the local NHS Trust that have kept me going. And, you know, for me now, it's about having experienced it, having a transplant, what can I give back? You know, a lot of people who are facing chronic illness, not just kidney disease, sometimes feel that they don't have a voice, that they can't express how they're feeling, how the disease or the illness is affecting them. And I want to be able to support those and be that voice for them and do the best that I can.
And having said that, what do you see as the key challenges when it comes to organ donation?
Well, the work I've been doing has been specifically centered around the diverse Muslim communities living in the UK. And without kind of giving you too much of a history of organ donation, but the issue of organ donation and transplantation in the context of Islamic law, you know, it's been debated across the Muslim world for the last 6 decades. And while there are many areas of consensus, sadly, you know, Islamic scholars sometimes differ in their opinions, depending on their methods of reasoning. So on a practical level, you know, this means that for organ donation, certain rulings considered by some scholars to be permissible under Islamic law may not be deemed acceptable to the others. And that's where I've been working with the support of NHS Blood and Transplant to work with local imams and scholars to develop an updated religious edict in the context of the UK. And alhamdulillah, we delivered the edict back in June 2019, but there is still more work to be done.
And just touching on that, you've mentioned a little bit about what you've done to overcome these key challenges. Who do you feel are the key stakeholders when we talk about the issue of organ donation in Islam?
Well, we're all key stakeholders. You know, sadly, chronic kidney disease or kidney disease affects main communities much more than others. So, you know, there is a significant risk that it is more than likely that we're going to need an organ than actually become an organ donor. So that's one aspect, is raising the awareness levels of how we can help communities understand how to better manage their health and well-being. You know, there is a propensity of hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and all these things can lead to potential organ failure. So that's important. Education is absolutely key. But in terms of then helping our scholars, imams, we need to develop the insight to be able to share with them so they truly understand these are the concerns of our communities across the country. And whatever they come up with has to really address those issues in a language that they understand. And if I give you an example, despite the fact that we've now been able to secure the updated religious edict in June 2019, and it's got wide circulation, it's been picked up across the globe as a very comprehensive document, and it's had that scrutiny that needs to be there by other scholars. We still need to do more work because the issue around diagnosis of death using neurological criteria, i.e. brainstem death, that's still a key concern for many faith communities, not just the Muslim community. And that's the work that I'm continuing to do now, supporting NHSBT as well as our scholars that are working with us.
And Amjid, in your opinion, what more can be done? I mean, in terms of experts engaging in the community and the community really looking at this and taking it more seriously?
That's a really great question. Despite the fact that we've got this updated religious edict, there's still more work to be done in terms of raising awareness. But even more so now because of the fact of the law change. In May 2020, we've moved to deemed consent, which means that unless you've opted out, if you were to die in a circumstance that made you eligible as an organ donor, then your family would be approached about giving consent for organ donation. And that's really important because a lot of people, whilst they're aware there's been a law change, they've not actually proactively had a conversation with their family members. And the last thing that our specialist nurses in organ donation want to do is to approach a family member where they're completely blind to the discussion or conversation around organ donation. So that for me, I think is absolutely key. And I would really, really appreciate and hope that our community itself takes a proactive stance to this and begin to have these conversations with their family members and loved ones.
I think that's really, really important. Like you said, actually, the law had changed, and I am aware that the law had changed because my mum actually mentioned it to me, but I'd totally forgotten about it. So yes, definitely a conversation that people should be having. We can talk about all the work that you've done in terms of organ donation. I think we can go on about this for hours and hours, but you do have a few more things that you're involved in that I would like to touch on today. One is that you're a partner and chair at the Strategic Independent Advisory Group for Avon and Somerset Police. Can you tell me more about this role?
Well, part of my role is voluntary and some of it is commissioned. The voluntary role is all around the independent advisory groups. So following the Stephen Lawrence inquiry some years ago now, it's about 20 years ago, a report was issued asking all constabularies to look at the way that they were engaging with their local BAME communities. And as part of that, Avon and Somerset Police have developed a framework where they've got regional IAGs where made up of local community stakeholders who provide insight, guidance, and constructive challenge to the police when they get together on a quarterly basis. I was invited to join an IAG in Bristol back in, I think it was 2014. And within about I think a year of being a member of that group, I was invited to become the chair of the Bristol IAG, which I did for about 3 years, and then decided it was time to hand over the reins to somebody else. But I was really humbled by the fact that Avon and Somerset Police approached me and said, would I take on the role of the chair of the Strategic Advisory Group, which was the kind of umbrella for all of the IAGs across the force. And coming from the background that I've come from, for me to do something like that, I felt if it was to be done, we needed to do it where it was really adding value. And I'm pleased to say that, we went from a group of 6 people on that strategic IAG to 23 in the last 18 months since I've been chair. And I'm really grateful to all of the community partners who have joined and add, that voice to the table. And it's now become much more of a one-stop shop where the police are able to engage with key advisors from the community and consult and seek advice and guidance on issues that affect the way that they police local communities.
You mentioned there about having a voice, having a seat on the table. As we all know, and people have come to realize more and more, representation really does matter. But how does the work that you do there, how does it benefit our communities?
Well, it comes back to that term that we've just used, the voice at the table. If we're not there, then nobody gets to hear what concerns us. What I'm pleased to say is that, if you look at the way statutory agencies, businesses, and other key stakeholders engage communities, historically, it's kind of been perceived that we've come in at the end of a process rather than at the beginning. So what the IAG framework enables us to do is to be able to be at the table at the beginning of a discussion or a plan, where we can give that local insight, we can feed into the decision makers, the concerns, what will work, what won't, how it will land, what are the things that they need to think about in terms of managing the expectations of the community, but also at the same time, being able to adapt and review the work that they're doing or whatever plans they put in process to ensure that they're listening. It's about demonstrating that they're not just bringing us to the table and ticking a box, but actually taking the advice and then acting on it, and then feeding back to the community to say, this is what we've done on the advice, based on the advice that you've given us, and this is the way the change has been implemented.
That sounds like a fantastic way to mobilize the community, get them involved, and like we said, get a voice, have a voice at the table. Another thing, Amjid, that we had talked about off camera, and one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you was to get your opinion on the importance of community cohesion. So firstly, I wanted to ask, what do you see the challenges facing the ethnic communities currently?
Well, I think I hate to come back to it, but COVID-19 has highlighted disproportionality like it's never had before, not just in health, but in socioeconomic terms, in education terms, in deprivation in terms of housing. Lots of things have been highlighted by the advent of this disease. I think the positive that's come out of it is that whilst it's highlighted the disproportionality, it's also raised the game in terms of key influencers and decision makers reaching out and asking for advice and guidance on what needs to change. So in terms of community engagement, I think whilst we can sit back and say, well, this is what's happening to us, we've got to then step up to the mark and say, well, this is what we need to see change, and provide solutions rather than just highlight the problems. I truly believe that, look, we're all good at identifying when something goes wrong, but then to provide the framework of how to navigate around it, or to work through the problem, or to perhaps look at a completely different way of doing things, we've got to be able to come forward and do that. But I am pleased to say much more of that is happening. And as a local example, there's great work being done by Bristol City Council through our Deputy Mayor, Asher Craig. It's a case of what I've seen personally is working with rather than doing to. And that's where I think there's an opportunity for us to really demonstrate that working together collectively, all communities, we can make that positive change that needs to happen.
And sorry, I have to stop and say that was a beautiful, beautiful answer. And looking at the changes in Bristol, I feel it has been making a difference by having a different makeup of our leaders. What are you doing to support the ethnic communities? I'm sorry, that sounds like a really direct question. I don't mean to be rude, but I'd like to get out from you what you're doing.
Well, the key things that are on my to-do list at this minute in time is having retired from HSBC, I work in a voluntary capacity, as well as some of it being commissioned, both of which are centered around raising awareness and understanding of issues around health, particularly around organ failure and transplantation, and the management of chronic kidney disease. But within that, it's not just about kidney disease, it's about looking at other prevalent diseases within the South Asian community, like hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. So, I've had great support to be able to do that work, and that's where some of my focus is. The other part of it is around the criminal justice system, working with the police and the Crown Prosecution Service, and developing that framework of IAGs, making sure it's embedded. The last thing we want to do, Junior, is to develop all these great plans and then only to find that, as we know, tomorrow is promised to no man. When I'm not around, that framework then dissipates or disappears. So I want to make sure that the work that I'm doing is truly embedded. It's got a sponsor, it's being owned, and that we start identifying people within our community to start taking the lead. I'm just one person of our community that's doing this work, and there are far more talented people out there than me that could be leading this to the next stage. So I've got it to a point where we have a foundation. What I'd like to see now is people like you and others coming forward and actually now taking us and leapfrogging us into the future in a much more positive way. So I'm handing the baton over to you.
I really, really love that fact. I never have liked the idea of gatekeepers, and the plan that you have to hand the baton down is fantastic. Maybe Yoweri Museveni should have taken some advice for you in the latest Ugandan elections. And you mentioned there about other people getting involved and how important that is to you. How do you feel others can get involved?
Well, I think it's important for people like me and the conversations that you and I have had about, helping you to become more aware of what's happening, and not just keeping that information to myself. So wherever I can, I do share that as much as possible. And I would urge all of our community elders and community leaders to be doing that. One thing that I learned from my career at the bank was that it's important to succession plan. I remember when I was doing my management degree, reading a book around management practices, and the chapter was about managing by incompetence, and the thing, how to explain that in simple terms, when you're in your career, you're moving along. You start off where you are incompetent in your role, you develop the skills, you get to a point where you're doing the job really well, and then your boss turns around and says to you, right, it's now time to promote you. So what do? They promote you into a role, and what happens? You start off again at the bottom. You're managing by incompetence. You start off incompetent, you build your competence, and by the time you're working comfortably, you then move on again. What's important is for people who are in that situation is, as they're developing, they're identifying people behind them and developing them at the same time, so that when they move on, there's already somebody there who can pick up the role and take it to the next level. We're developing a staged approach to developing our communities, as well as the work that we do supporting our statutory agencies and partners.
That is fantastic. What a brilliant way to look at the future. talking of that, let's talk about 2021 and beyond. I feel like it's going to be a bumpy year. We will get through this, but it's going to be a tough one. What are your key aspirations for 2021?
Well, first and foremost is to try and keep well, and I hope by the grace of God that I'm protected from COVID-19, because for me, as a clinically extremely vulnerable patient, as a transplant patient, God forbid if I was to get the disease, then it could be quite serious. So it's to keep well first and foremost. Secondly, to continue to support my family in the best way I possibly can. But then, in terms of my work with the community and the work that I do on behalf of NHS Blood and Transplant, Kidney Care UK, and our colleagues from criminal justice, is to try and add value where I can. What I'm acutely conscious of is that there will come a time when my knowledge base is going to kind of come to an end, in that we need fresh ideas and new ways of working and looking at things going forward. So I'm now starting to look at people in the community that I can encourage to come on board, start sharing the knowledge and understanding and the links that I've developed with them, so that when I do eventually decide to take a step away, that the support to the agencies and partners that I'm working with is continuing and ongoing. So that's where I would hope that I'm able to kind of move things forward.
That sounds great. And I will be keeping in touch to make sure I'm in the loop. And some of the work you're doing is fantastic, and I'd very much like to be involved. Just coming to the end of the interview, it's been a lovely time with you. Thank you so much for taking this Sunday afternoon off. I just want to get to our final thoughts now, and what your key messages are for 2021 and beyond, and just your final words as well, please, Amjid.
Well, thank you once again for this opportunity, Junior, to be able to share my thoughts with you. It truly is humbling and a privilege to be able to do so. I'd just like to say, let's be grateful that we're okay, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccine is now here. I know there's still concern across BAME communities about whether it's right to take it or not. I would just urge all communities to please make an informed decision about whether or not the vaccine is right for you. I would just like to think that, we all collectively move forward in the right way. I am concerned, I am worried that we could end up prolonging this lockdown, social distancing, if certain sections of the community, don't engage in the process. But I wouldn't want to be saying to anybody, you've got to do it just because everyone else is doing it. So a personal plea from me to everyone is, please don't rely on the WhatsApp messages. Really do seek the information around the vaccine, so that we can come out of this horrendous period that we're in at this minute in time. To conclude, look, life is challenging for all of us. Nobody knows what's around the corner. It's a case of try to remain positive, do the best that you can, and work through the problems in the best way that you can. And rely on your family, rely on your friends, because I think collectively together, that's the only way we can go forward.
Amjid Ali, thank you so much. I think we're going to leave it on collectively together. That's the way we're going to go forward. Thank you so much, sir. That is the end of today, and I hope to catch up with you again very, very soon.
No, thank you very much, Junior. All the best to you.